Maayong adlaw. Good day, everyone. I am Trizer Mansueto, and this is my presentation today. In August 1999, it was reported that there was a rising incidence of demonic possessions in Europe because many people have lost their Catholic faith and because many would resort to occult practitioners. Because of the rise of the incidence of demonic possessions, which the Vatican deemed as a pastoral emergency, the Vatican held training courses for priests in exorcism. This was meant to address the shortage of members of the clergy who can perform the Catholic rite. Thus, many archdioceses and dioceses worldwide dispatched representatives to Rome to train there. Manila was one of the first archdioceses which responded to the call, and Father Jose Francisco Sequia became one of the pioneer Filipino exorcists. After Father Sequia returned to the country, he also became a trainer of other Filipino exorcists. Today, there is now the Philippine Association of Catholic Exorcists, or PACE. In the Visayas, one of the more well-known members of PACE is Reverend Father Darwin Gitgano of the Diocese of Tagbilaran. Father Gitgano has been traveling in the Visayas and Mindanao to spread knowledge about the occult as well as on exorcism and deliverance. Based on Father Gitgano's pronouncements, a lot of Filipinos get possessed because they resort to occult or to barang in order to settle strained relationships or conflicts within the family or with other people. So, what is barang or daot? Our earliest reference to barang or daot happened in March of 1577 when a Cebuana named Ginapas was accused of bewitching a Spanish couple, their slaves, and a Spanish young man. As a result of barang, all the people mentioned above lost their minds, supposedly due to the use of a concoction, primarily of roots and animal body parts. Mateo Sanchez was the first one to define what barang is in 1711 in his Vocabulario de la Lengua Bisaya. He defined it as hechizo que mata, or a spell that kills. He even elaborated this by using the word in a sentence. I quote, "Ginbarang ni Kuan ang anak ko," or "someone used barang on my child." Juan Felix de la Encarnacion, on the other hand, used daot in his 1883 Diccionario Bisaya Español. Encarnacion defined it as, quote, "ser malo, cosa mala en cualquier género." Like Sanchez, he also used the word in a sentence. And I quote, "Gidautan man ang anak ko," which means, my son was harmed through a malefice. Richard Liban, in his opus Cebuano Sorcery, Malign Magic in the Philippines, on the other hand, does not give a specific definition of what barang is, but he says that barang refers to the insect which enters the body through open organs, like the mouth, the nostrils, and the ears. These insects then cause maladies by biting the liver, the stomach, intestines, and the lungs. In the 17th century, Father Francisco Ignacio Alsina, a missionary to the Visayas, defined barang as a spell which inevitably causes the death of the victim if he or she is not treated immediately. Barang is supposedly performed by a barangan or a sorcerer, but it can also be performed, according to other sources, by the babaylan, the sorceress, or even by men who dressed as women called asog or bayog. Sorcery, however, is not exclusive to Filipinos because this is also done in various parts of the world, according to the Vatican exorcist Father Gabriele Amorth. He says that this is done after an appropriate rite of adoring Satan, which uses, quote, photographs, puppets, or objects belonging to the one who will be struck, unquote. The early Spanish missionaries were scandalized by this strange practice by our ancestors, so they aggressively acted to put out this evil practice. Barang, they believed, was inherently evil because it had its origins in the dominion of darkness, as mentioned in Colossians chapter 1, verses 13 to 14. The missionaries led an all-out campaign against what they perceived were pagan practices in the Philippines. They were guided by the Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of Heretics, by Heinrich Kramer, which was first published in 1486. There were also Spanish works inspired by the Malleus that they made as a reference, like Martin de Castañeda's Tratado, published in 1529, and another Tratado, published in 1628. The latter work dedicates an entire chapter on witchcraft, particularly on one which causes harm or physical health. Roy Ellen, on the other hand, believes that sorcery is channeled through four agents. Number 3 is the most familiar to us Filipinos, since casting a curse may be harnessed through the manipulation of objects and even through animals, especially insects. Sorcery was forbidden, and sorcerers were hunted down in the Visayas because it posed as a hindrance to authority and the future livelihood of priests, as well as of the spread of Catholic orthodoxy. So, the missionaries confronted practitioners in the Visayas. Wherever they went in the Visayas, the missionaries confiscated occult paraphernalia, such as what you see in the picture, exorcised them before burning these. In order to discourage would-be practitioners, they labeled them as infernal ministers and urged people to shun them. This happened all over in the Visayas, be it in Bohol, Negros, Cebu, and wherever else where there were practitioners. One was even burned alive in Cebu for leading some 100 witches on a procession where, quote, they danced and sang while eating human flesh, flew through the air, and summoned devils in the form of carabaos and serpents, unquote. Belief in the native religion persisted despite the efforts of the missionaries to extirpate it. It survived because there were people who the missionaries failed to reach. There were also those who intentionally left the towns in order to evade the control of colonial and ecclesiastical authorities. In the 19th century, there were babaylanes operating in Negros Island who usually gathered in small groups to practice their craft, particularly to call spirits to aid them to cause harm on other people. The Catecismo de Doctrina Cristiana in the lengua Bisaya by Mentrida had already forbidden sorcery under the pain of excommunication. Another catechism was also published in 1867, still bearing the prohibition on barang. Not to be outdone, another book was published by no less than the Bishop of Haro, Bishop Portero, prohibiting hiwit or barang, which can cause death or could make its victims go crazy. Again, despite the efforts to extirpate the indigenous faith, yet it continued to resist in spite of the fact that many embraced the Catholic faith brought by the Spaniards. Centuries after the introduction of Catholicism, some components of the native faith melded with the faith brought by the colonizers. We see this in today's mananambals who combine indigenous practices with Catholic beliefs, like what you see now in our picture, which shows a mananambal in her own household, which is full of Catholic images. Called syncretism, even sorcerers cast spells on people to get sick or to die by using Catholic practices. This is especially true when people seek the help of San Antonio nga walay kaluoy here in Cebu. The Catholic saint San Antonio is known for his miracles, whom people having issues with other relatives or friends go to ask heaven to bring retribution to the ones who brought them discomfort or sufferings. This practice is also a curious admixture of the elements of pre-contact animist faith with the Roman Catholic faith brought by the Iberians more than 500 years ago. Syncretism, however, is not unique to the Philippines because, as Maria Touche claims, even the Spaniards of the 16th to the 17th century combined Christian rites with ancient pagan customs, where churches were turned into storehouses full of magical ingredients. I argue that despite the efforts of church authorities in eradicating the animist faith and the introduction of Christianity can be likened to a failure in exorcism. Exorcism is a rite to cast off the devil from the possessed individual. The animist faith can be a metaphor for the devil, which Christianity wishes to extinguish but failed to do so. Instead of defeating evil, some Catholic practices were instead absorbed by it, resulting to the birth of a unique Philippine folk religion. We don't only see this amalgamation today, which combines native and Catholic practices in barang, but we also see this in the appropriation of the sinulog, which originally was offered to the anitos by the Cebuanos, but also in the bathing of the image of the Santo Niño after its annual fiesta, which only calls to mind the practice of bathing the image of in the sea by the ancient Cebuanas to ask for rains during periods of drought, among others. The persistence of barang and other such practices today could simply be attributed to the indigenous faith's refusal to be obliterated, such that it had to adapt to the situation. This then helps us call to mind Daniel Raff's statement on why syncretism occurs. And I quote, Christian theology may be universal in scope, but the history of Christianity has been characterized by the adaptation of this theology to local settings. Christianity is not everywhere the same beliefs and rituals, however much the Vatican and church hierarchy may endeavor to legislate norms. So that's my presentation this afternoon. Thank you very much for listening. Daghang salamat, and may we all have a good day ahead of us.